The GameCube was my first ever console. I got it when I was 7 years old, and I vividly remember Christmas Day, opening it up, getting it plugged in, and from the moment I heard that was it. I was pretty much in love with video games ever since that moment. I went to school with blisters on my thumbs from playing Smash Bros. I'd buy a strategy guide for literally every game I owned, and still to this day, one of my life's most treasured moments was playing through the Wind Waker together with my mum and my sister, which is why getting this was incredibly nostalgic and pretty special for me. So let's talk about it. So this is the NYXI Wizard controller, and if you couldn't guess, they are GameCube style Joy-Con controllers for the Switch, but they also work with PC, but with a ton of modern improvements from the original, which makes this feel much more usable and fresh in 2023. And let me tell you, this controller is so beautiful. I am so glad that this thing exists and I own it. Feels well made, good in the hands, has some quirks of the old controller, but with a lot of modern improvements too. Now, it does have one pretty major flaw, which I'm going to talk about in a minute, but regardless of that, for me, this is going to be my go-to Switch controller from now on. But I don't necessarily recommend it for everyone, and let me tell you why. Is it more ergonomic and comfortable than other modern controllers in 2023? No. Does it give you a competitive edge in any way other than Smash Brothers? No. Does it fill me with childhood joy and nostalgia? Absolutely yes. Yes, it does. And that's this video in a nutshell, really. This thing isn't necessarily going to charm newbies, but for us millennial gamers, it's wonderful. And maybe competitive Smash players too. But I don't really know much about competitive Smash other than... So before we jump in, I have to point out that I was sent this for free, but honest to God, I would have bought this anyway. This is absolutely sick, but I'm not being paid to make this video. All of the thoughts are going to be my own. Also, a massive shout out to Shankmod for making and engineering something just like this on his own before any big company did. Go check out his video he made about it. It's honestly incredible. Alright, so let's go over some of the features of this thing. So what sets this controller apart from the current tournament controller is that you can not only use it wirelessly while the console is docked, but you can also detach each side and use it to attach to the Switch, like the Joy-Cons. This makes the footprint pretty big, about the same size as a Steam Deck, actually. So this isn't the most portable setup, but if you're playing around the house, I find it's totally fine. And playing like this feels great. It takes a couple minutes to get used to, but once you do, the controls become like second nature. It can be a little annoying to reach the camera stick. I have to kind of move my hand out to the side to get to it properly. But that's just the GameCube controller design. That's not a fault of the manufacturer. And I got used to this really quickly anyway. So we've got an expanded set of buttons compared to the original, with 4 shoulder buttons on the top rather than the 3 on the original. And these feel great. They have a really short travel distance and they're super clicky, and they essentially feel just like a mouse would. These do feel different to regular triggers on, say, like a PlayStation 5 controller, so they take a little bit of getting used to, but once you do get used to them, they just feel really nice. It has these 2 rear buttons that feel really nice and clicky with a good bit of grip on them. They can be a little bit awkward to get to, but still a really nice addition to have. There's 2 turbo buttons down the bottom, which essentially can assign a certain button to be mashed really fast. But not gonna lie, I don't know what turbo buttons are used for. Is it speed running? Please feel free to educate me. I feel like I'm a bit of a noob saying that, but the D-pad is nice and clicky with low travel too. There's the regular menu buttons, just like on the regular Switch. And these little cog buttons are used to assign the rear buttons, and you can also assign macros to these if you're into that sort of thing. I was really happy to find that the controller supports gyro, which is super handy, but unfortunately it doesn't support NFC, so no amiibo support. But unfortunately, this is where we reach the pretty big negative with this controller, and it's these face buttons. They are not nearly as clicky as the others, and they feel much more damp and squishy in comparison, which I was pretty bummed by when I first got it out of the box. Initially, I thought this may have been intentional. Maybe it gave some competitive edge in Smash Bros or something like that.
What was...
But after testing it against a load of other controllers, I just don't think that's the case. Please let me know if I'm wrong. Competitive Smash players, is there something good about having squishier buttons? I don't know. I'll do a sound comparison to give you an idea. Now I feel quite critical saying all that, so I want to balance it out and be fair with this. These are still totally usable and are comfortable, and I've honestly really gotten used to them over the last couple of days, and they've actually become slightly less squishy, I feel like, after pressing them more and more. They follow your thumbs perfectly fine, and not gonna lie, playing certain games like Breath of the Wild or Animal Crossing, any games that are slightly less competitive, actually feels quite nice. They feel quite mellow and smooth, and it can be a bit, I don't know, a bit more chilled out to play. It's hard to say. And again, in fairness, I did play some Smash with these, and I personally felt like it was fine. I didn't feel like they hindered me in any way, and for me, overall aren't a deal breaker, but I think they will be for some people. So bear that in mind before buying one. It's partly made up for me by the fact that they light up. That's pretty, isn't it? However, on the flip side of that is possibly the star of the show, and it's these joysticks. They are full height and just feel wonderful. A million billion miles ahead of the Joycons, and you can change the joystick rings between a circular and a more classic hexagonal style. I spent a good amount of time with both, and as much as the hexagonal ones are probably nostalgic, I do prefer the round ones, but the big feature here is the fact that these are Hall effect joysticks, which essentially means if you get really close to them and then speak into them, they make your voice sound like this. No, but really, Hall effect joysticks actually just mean that they're developed in a much more sophisticated way so that they never ever develop joystick drift. How does that work? Magic, baby. So the joysticks are a little bit different to the original controller, as they have slightly different grip patterns on the left side, and on the right side we obviously have a full-size joystick rather than that little stubby one. Do you remember that? That was weird, wasn't it? There's 3 levels of rumble on the controller, and you can turn it off completely if you'd like to. I like the lowest setting personally. The battery lasts for 8 hours, and each Joy-Con can be charged separately, which I find really weird, but luckily you can charge both at the same time by docking the Switch or charging the Switch itself. And just to confirm, it does slot into the dock perfectly fine. The response time feels great. I noticed no delay whatsoever, and actions feel quick and snappy, but I haven't got any numbers to back that up. Comfort wise, it feels great in the hand. It's nice and light, but feels really well made still. I've played a ton of different games using these over the last couple of days for a couple of hours at a time, and it's been totally comfortable, haven't had any issues whatsoever. And for me, this is a massive improvement over the Joy-Cons. These are way more comfortable. So all in all, I do really love this controller. It's such a shame about those face buttons. If those were a little bit better, this would have been perfect. And sure, there are cheaper, more modern controllers out there, but personally, I think this is just so much cooler and so much more special than a sort of regular modern controller. The GameCube controller has always been weird and wonderful, but I love it for that. So the fact that I can use this in a modern setup is just sick. It is a little bit expensive at £56, but if you use code Steam Deck Boys at checkout, you'll get 10% off your order. Have I become... but just to warn you, these things are highly sought after at the minute. They've pretty much been out of stock since they came out a couple of weeks ago. So if you do want to get one, I would recommend putting in a pre-order. If you're new here, it's nice to meet you, by the way. My name's Mike. Thank you so much for chilling out with me here today. This is really fun. Have a really good rest of your day, and I'll catch you really soon. Thanks, guys.